What movie was basically just an ad? Sex tape starring Cameron Diaz and Jason Segel. That entire thing was a gigantic ad for Apple, and they weren't even subtle about it. There is literally a scene where Jason Segel throws an iPad out the window and then goes to get it from outside and says, "Man, the construction on these things is unbelievable." Here is a whole montage of all the Apple promoting in the film. While Coke is everywhere and even literally saves the aliens from death, it's McDonald's facts that are more interesting. Supposedly they're the ones who bankrolled a lot of film's production. It's one of the only films to legally use Ronald McDonald. They are very hardcore about how they let media use him, but they were basically the producers of the movie and forced the McDonald's scene. Lucasfilm actually did the special effects for Spaceballs, free of charge, on condition that Mel Brooks never actually releases toys for the movie. That's why the movie made such an in-joke about it. George Lucas signed a deal with Fox. He agreed to forego payment for directing the original Star Wars in exchange for full rights to the merchandising. He made billions from the toys and product placements. Holy fucking shit, that was rough to watch. The whole movie was a giant reference to Space Jam 1, filled with many references to literally every single fucking piece of Warner Brothers IP. It barely had a plot. It was just enough of a plot to call a plot, and then literally filled with references that no one asked for. It just felt so fake and produced. Maybe Michael Jordan is just a better actor than I realized, or Tenyomi was less critical on Space Jam 1. I think it's ironically a really good analogy of what it was like to be a kid in the 90s versus now. They even make a direct joke about it, with the guy in the control room wearing a JP shirt complaining about selling dinosaur sponsorships to brands. But then that scene just becomes more product placement. I almost appreciate how upfront they were about making fun of product placement while aggressively placing products. It's weird that the whole movie frames the sheer absurdity of Al Pacino shilling out for Dunkin' Donuts, but it still actually is a real ad for a real product that Dunkin's is really paying to advertise. It's like they had a celebrity endorsement commercial idea that was so stupid they felt the need to make an entire movie letting the audience know they knew it was stupid. Having not seen the movie before, I found the Beats product placement worse than the Bud Light. Beats, they zoom in and focus on it. Bud Light, they have a truck that gets destroyed, bottles that are burning. And when Mark Wahlberg randomly drinks one, he pops the cap off in a way that you don't even see the product label on the bottle, and takes more of a swig than a chug. Both hilariously bad. https://n.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/copper_mountain_film. This piece of shit right here. This is hands down the worst thing I have ever seen. I thought, young Jim Carrey with Alan Thicke, labeled a comedy, it will probably have some laughs. The answer is no, it really fucking doesn't. It's a 1-hour Club Med ad, with shitty country music band performances, with a sprinkle of Carrey, Thicke hijinks that just didn't hit the mark. My friends and I had movie nights back in the day where we would rate each author's movie picks. This was the first to earn a 0 out of 10. Please don't watch this to verify my claims, it is not worth it. This is literally the worst movie from my childhood. I remember being at the video store. It was my pick to get something and I chose this. It said Jim Carrey from The Mask and Ace Ventura on the front. Even made it look like a comedy. I was so happy to watch another comedy with him in it. The disappointed was indescribable. The saddest thing was we didn't have much money, you know, and it was my pick that weekend. Can you imagine how horrible I felt as a kid having been the one to pick it? And then the whole family watching it and slowly seeing everyone's faces turn as they realized what it was. Dad hasn't watched a movie with Jim in it since. I'm 37 now and I still remember how shit I felt watching it. Looking back now, I'd say this was the first time I remember being conned. This movie is a fraud. The Thunderbirds movie. Lady Penelope's iconic Fab 1 car was changed from a Rolls-Royce, as it is in the original shows, to a Ford car. Proudly displays the Ford logo front and center. Every single car in the movie was a Ford car. including several of a model that at the time hadn't come out yet. There are scenes of news reports that say sponsored by Ford in the corner. Gee, I wonder which motoring company helped finance the movie. Don't get me wrong, I still kind of like the movie despite how bad it is, but tough. Josie and the Pussycats came out in April 2001 and flopped as hard as anything had in a long time. Didn't even make back half its budget. Zoolander came out in September 2001 and was a very solid hit. Made double its budget, created more than a couple memes that still persist today, and even got a sequel. The weird thing is, they're basically the same movie. One is based on the music industry and the other fashion, but other than that they have the same basic underlying plot concept and a really dumb but enjoyable sense of humor. If you like Zoolander and haven't seen Josie, give it a shot. You might be pleasantly surprised. It was a very Gen X movie. The early 2000s was a time where corporate cynicism caught up to Gen X irony and, honestly, Josie and the Pussycats handled that smarter than it had any right to. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a secretly brilliant film all should analyze, but much like James Gunn's Scooby-Doo movie, the product was steeped in enough sarcasm to drown a Brit. Whatever the line is between doing something ironically and still doing the thing regardless is danced over the entire film, but I ultimately think the movie comes out ahead. Whatever brand awareness was gained is, I'd argue, successfully undercut by a clear message that you shouldn't listen to ad marketing. It also sorta worked in their favor that White Castle, at least at the time of the film's release and I guess still now to an extent given their location range, isn't exactly a super big universal known global chain, so there is still a portion of people who weren't going to be the most familiar with the naming convention of it and didn't really think much of it. I remember being on movie message boards and chats around the time that movie came out and a lot of West Coast people who didn't have any local to them being surprised that White Castle was an actual real chain. Coming from NJI, Dorkley would point out how there was a handful of White Castles much closer than Cherry Hill when the one they wanted to go to in New Brunswick was no more. The whole purpose of places like Starbucks is for people with no decision-making ability whatsoever to make 6 decisions just to buy 1 cup of coffee. Short, tall, light, dark, calf, decaf, low-fat, non-fat, etc. So people who don't know what the hell they're doing or who on earth they are can, for only $2.95, get not just a cup of coffee but an absolutely defining sense of self. Tall, decaf, cappuccino. Joe Fox. Lego Elves, Secrets of Elvendale is, I'm a way worse. Like, the other shows are Lego characters doing Lego things. I won't defend them, but they're all using the same basic setup as most children's shows since the 80s. I tried Elvendale because I enjoy action-adventure shows aimed towards girls, but I couldn't get over the jarring realistic people with vaguely Lego-themed powers living in a vaguely Lego-themed world. I quit watching after about 5 minutes. Red Scorpion was a right-wing extremist political ad in disguise as a movie. The film was produced by Jack Abramoff, a Republican Party lobbyist known for promoting the Reagan Doctrine and USA to anti-communist guerrilla movements such as Jonas Savimbi's National Union for the Total Independence of Angola during the Cold War. Abramoff also established the International Freedom Foundation financed by the South African apartheid regime. When Abramoff left Citizens for America, he hired Darren Olson to write a screenplay modeled after the Angolan Civil War. The film allegedly received financial aid from South Africa as part of its propaganda efforts to undermine international sympathy for the African National Congress. 2-3. Well, the Lego movie, you know, with the Legos and all. Oh, almost forgot. Every single oh so stupid Michael Bay Brute Fest. Baby ads for Michael B's ego. It knows no bounds. It cannot be stopped. Know this. Remember this, young one, for one day you might need this knowledge. Remember what Michael Bay's ego did to your childhood pop culture. R.I.P. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RIP. Transformers RIP. G.I. Joe. Michael Bay, executive producer, killer of 80s cartoons. Remember the Emoji Movie, Ralph Breaks the Internet, and Space Jam. both 1 and 2. They all center themselves around going into other intellectual properties and either A, showing how the mechanics work, like Candy Crush in the Emoji Movie or eBay with Ralph Breaks the Internet, or B, interacting and sometimes even encouraging you to want to watch or buy the product. The montage in Space Jam 2 and the whole Disney stuff online scene in Ralph Breaks the Internet. Now, I'm not saying that all movies based on ads can't be good. The Lego Movie is also considered an ad movie but has such a well-written story that you can enjoy it. However, the majority of movies, like the 3 I mentioned above, are either mediocre or border on being some of the worst movies ever made. Everything by Hasbro, including Transformers, G.I. Joe, He-Man, and so many others, literally only existed as a way to get around the laws of how long an ad could be. I seem to think there was also something about advertising directly to children being looked down upon. Billions of dollars later, and it appears to have worked. Bonus: Snake Eyes was only created because they made a minimalist toy that didn't need any of the extras the other toys needed. Saw no voice in the cartoon, no gun in the box, no backstory initially, and yet he became by far the most popular character they have ever created. Every modern movie is a mini ad for China. I'm going to be sensitive about this, but China invests a lot in the film industry, and in return they get to showcase Chinese culture. It makes them look like the good guys. I mean, who could hate China? They have such a rich history as showcased in recent Disney, Marvel and other entertainment properties. It is hard to hate the Chinese when prominent Chinese actors are placed in your favorite movie. Sounds familiar? It should. It is right out of the American playbook. We exported our culture and it has become the dominant culture in the world. American music, films, TV, fashion, etc. The U.S. gained world leadership, or at least a seat of prominence, by cultural leadership. Why wouldn't China repeat this highly effective playbook? Every Bond film, they're just high-end, luxury brands that the average Joe can't afford. Aston Martin, Omega watches, Beluga caviar, expensive champagne, designer clothes where a polo shirt costs like $800, and of course Walther firearms. Every one of the Daniel Craig films has an obvious one. Casino Royale, he's driving a Ford Fusion or something for like 20 seconds. Skyfall, he drinks Heineken. Major corporations literally compete to advertise in Bond films to appeal to male customer bases. It may not be the entire movie, but Wreck-It Ralph 2 had an area that was basically the internet, with a ton of recognizable brand icons. Neat. Apparently there's an article about it. Here's a list the article gives. Here's a list of the video games, films, and international technology firms you'll want your children to be familiar with so they can get the most out of the trailer for Ralph Breaks the Internet. Wreck-It Ralph 2, Dance Dance Revolution X2, Street Fighter 2, Dragon's Lair, Pac-Man, Virtua Cop, Frogger, Space Invaders, Cisco, Amazon, Twitter, Snapchat, Carvana, MySpace, IMDb, Facebook, LA Bible, YouTube, Yelp, Google, National Geographic, Photoshop, Nordstrom Rack, Urban Outfitters, Family Matters, Oh My Disney, Beauty and the Beast, The Princess and the Frog, Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Milan, Frozen, Sleeping Beauty, Tangled, Brave, The Little Mermaid, Pocahontas, Mona, Aladdin, Snow White, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Cars, The Muppet Show, Up, Star Wars, Disney Animation, The Marvel Cinematic Universe, Pixar, Toy Story, Dumbo, Fantasia, Emoji Movie, Space Jam 2, and Wreck-It Ralph Breaks the Internet are all the over-the-top product chill movies. Lego Movie is advertisement for Lego, but hey, you get what you pay for, and it is actually well written for a commercial. I feel like Avengers Endgame was less a film and more Marvel doing a self-referential victory lap. Castaway with Tom Hanks is a 2-hour ad for FedEx. Pretty much every movie Adam Sandler has written/produced for the past 20 years. I honestly thought it was a much more current thing, But I just watched Little Nicky the other day and there's barely a single major plot point in that movie that isn't directly influenced by a popular brand name. It's colder on Earth than it is in hell. Time to go to Target to buy some warm clothes. I need to learn how to use my hell magic. Let me practice on this can of Coke. I gotta stop this rampaging horde of demons. Let's feed them Popeye's chicken. It's tragic. Not a movie, a TV show, but Modern Family apostrophe. I used to watch it sometimes until I realized that the story of literally every single episode was something about someone needs to go somewhere to buy something. So the show functions as advertising for the idea of vapid consumerism as a lifestyle. If the writers were forbidden to involve going shopping from any future scripts, I don't think that there would be any story at all. Castaway. Forgive me if someone has already mentioned this one. I looked through many of the comments but can't quite stomach the notion of checking all 15k plus of them. The following is a story which made its way to me from a film-related class at Pepperdine in which an old friend was told the following, at least as it was summarized to me. The movie was literally a commercial in that it was a project actually set in motion by FedEx. They wanted a film in which FedEx was predominantly featured and hired a writer to create a script which centered itself around the company in some way. I am however only repeating the words of this friend who was at Pepperdine after they'd been told to another old friend, may he rest in peace, whom then conveyed what's above to me. I cannot directly speak for its veracity and it seems the internet, at least upon its surface, does not make mention of this origin, but rather implies or explicitly states a writer spent many years on the script before bringing it to FedEx, at which point their involvement in its production came to be, but it is also stated they did not contribute any money for product placement. I was under the impression, whether true or not, they bankrolled the entire thing and were the root of its entire existence in the first place. Either way, it is in effect a commercial for the shipper, and they certainly facilitating its filming, as FedEx provided access to their facilities, Memphis, Los Angeles, and Moscow, as well as airplanes, trucks, uniforms, and logistical support. A team of FedEx marketers oversaw production through more than 2 years of filming. FedEx CEO Fred Smith made an appearance as himself for the scene where Chuck is welcomed back, which was filmed on location at FedEx's home facilities in Memphis, Tennessee. Wiki. That certainly seems like a lot of involvement and is definitely a form and very significant sum of payment for placement if one thinks about the costs FedEx incurred by providing those things to the production. The fact the team of FedEx marketers oversaw the filming for more than 2 years also seems to fit the origin story I was told many years ago by way of a student studying the film industry at Pepperdine University in Malibu, California, which is only 30 miles from Hollywood. Cheers, dash. Part of that is brand comparisons over time, especially for Pepsi. Pizza Hut also gets a big one in BTTF too. I think most of those are just nostalgia callbacks and they usually don't get much screen focus. The DeLorean is not advertising for anyone. The DeLorean Motor Company was already defunct when the movie came out. It was dissolved in February of 1983. The DeLorean just happens to be the vehicle they chose. After considering things such as a refrigerator. The most ridiculous product placement in the movie is the one you probably didn't even notice. California Raisins had an advertising deal. They wanted a close-up of some raisins and someone told them that filming raisins would look like dirt. Apparently they had a falling out. The actual advertisement ended up as a logo on a bench where the bum is sleeping when Marty returns to the present, and a handful of raisins that Marty eats when Doc calls him ... that you can't even recognize as raisins. I know E.T. had product placement for Reese's Pieces and Dirk Pepsi was in there too. My favorite is Lavender .45, a little unknown movie with Renee Zellweger filmed in Central Texas that's got a lot of big red product placement. Great movie though. Also had Peter Fonda and two guys from Dazed and Confused, Wally Wiggins and Rory Cochrane, and Reverend Horton Heat. The Lego Movie was basically an ad, but it was a well-executed one with actual story and characters instead of flat, one-dimensional, everyman with the sole purpose of pushing product placements. The Lego Movie is an ad with an interesting story that shows different way to play with Lego, celebrating the product and different ways of using it. The Lego Movie served a greater purpose than shoving a product in people's faces, and actually had a great story, so people don't see it as an ad.